Conventional wisdom and many studies have found that the average person stops consuming new music sometime in their late 20s or early 30s. I'm happy to report, dear 33ers, that this does not apply to many of you. Hi, my name is Frank. Welcome back to Channel 33 RPM, your channel for vinyl gear and more. So a little while ago, I ran a bunch of surveys on the community tab of my YouTube page. I did a video a week or two back with some really interesting results. If you missed that video, I will leave a link below. But I did leave a couple questions out of that other previous video pertaining to your thoughts on new music, because I found these results very, very interesting. So before we get into the results, just some background, because at the beginning of this video I talked about, well, okay, people stop listening or pursuing new music in their late 20s and early 30s. And I just give you a little bit more information about that. There was a 2015 study that analyzed data from Spotify, and that study found that people stopped listening to new music at around the age of 33. And in 2018, Deezer, another music streaming service, studied this as well and figured that people stop listening to new music at around the age of 30. And that was based on a survey out of the UK. It found that the peak age for discovering new music was age 24. And that's when 75% of respondents said they listened to 10 or more new tracks a week. All right, that is interesting. But as I said off the top, I think a lot of you guys are kind of bucking this trend. Just looking at the results here, check this out.
Channel 33 RPM.
This is the question I asked. The question was, do you seek out new releases and new artists? And I found this very encouraging. 44% of you said, yeah, I actively seek out new music. And another 42% of you said, well, you don't seek out new releases and artists actively, but you are open to checking out new stuff. So if we combine those, that is 86% of you, the vast majority of you, or at least those of you who voted in this survey, are saying you're open to listening to new stuff, which I think is really cool. 13% of you said, nah, new music sucks. So let's dive into some of these comments. Psych Alone wrote, I made a decision this year to listen to at least 100 albums released in 2022, any genre. And while there are some artists that I knew of previously, a vast majority of them are first listens. I highly recommend taking a dip into finding new music. You'll be surprised how much gold there is out there. I agree with that comment, but my gosh, 100 albums released in 2022. I mean, I guess it makes sense. There's far more than 100 albums that have been released or will be released this year, but man, that is a lot of new music to be listening to. I think that's pretty cool. Chaos wrote, I have built up quite a roster of bands and artists that ping my radar, but I will always give something new a chance. I mainly stay in my genre, mind you, but a good song is a good song, period. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. David wrote, I'm always searching for new releases. I can't stand not having new music to listen to on a regular basis. I've heard all the classic stuff far too much. And Umpy Gravy wrote, there's not much recorded since around 1980 that interests me. All right, so we know that the vast majority of you are seeking out new music, or you're open to it. I asked approximately how many new releases, not counting reissues, so this is new music released so far in 2022, have you purchased? This can be on any format. So check this out. Okay, fair enough. 22% of you said, no, you haven't bought anything. But, okay, let's look at these numbers here. So about 40% of you have bought 1 to 4 CDs, right? Like a handful of them. But check this out. 22% of you, nearly a quarter of viewers of this channel have bought 10, more than 10 new releases in 2022. I think that is absolutely fantastic. So let me tell you where I'm coming from on this whole thing. So obviously I was a teenager in the 80s and I was discovering tons of new music throughout my teens. And then in the 90s into my 20s, I continued to discover new music. In the 90s, it was kind of like all the grunge stuff, I guess, like Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. But by the late 90s, something weird had happened where all the 80s bands I liked kind of fell off the radar. They either kind of broke up and were kind of spinning their wheels and weren't really going anywhere. The bands I got into in the 90s, like as I said, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, whatever, they were kind of done or broken up. So I reached a point where I was like, man, all this music I liked, it's kind of like going nowhere. The new stuff I'm not really into. So I just kind of got into the habit of just all the stuff I had listened to for the previous 20 years. I just kept listening to all that stuff over and over and over. Then at one point in the early 2000s, I realized that, well, this sucks. I've heard all these albums so many times. If I don't start finding new music to sink my teeth into, to get into, and to really love, I'm going to start hating music. That's because my ears were craving something fresh. I was just tired of hearing all that same old stuff. So I purposely, as I said, beginning in the early 2000s, started pursuing new music, and it just kind of snowballed. And now I'm at the point where, my new music radar is always on high alert, right? I'm always looking for new stuff. I know a lot of people say there is no good music anymore, but there really is if you kind of look into it. Like, find a genre that you are into, and you are going to find good bands making that kind of music nowadays, right? It's not all highly polished, highly auto-tuned pop music and pop divas. I mean, that is maybe what's in the mainstream, but beyond that, as I'm saying, if you find stuff you're into, there is really good stuff still being made if you open up your mind to checking it out. All right, 33ers, I thought that this was interesting, the whole topic of pursuing new music and why we do it and how many of us do it and whether it's worthwhile. I would love to hear your opinions in the comments below. Do you still seek out new music? Why or why not? Let's have a discussion. Otherwise, I appreciate you watching, and thanks to everyone who voted in all these survey questions and all these polls that I had running on the community tab of the YouTube page. I'll do it again in 6 months and see where we all stand on these issues again. Dear 33ers, until next time, keep on spinning.